If you've spent any time on the app formerly known as Twitter recently, you probably saw this ad a few weeks ago. PragerU recently spent $1 million advertising their new documentary about detransitioners, so there's a couple words I may need to give some context on. I have talked about PragerU before, but if you're new here and don't know, Prager University is a not an accredited university advocacy group that poses as an alternative to universities and just so happens to be funded by fracking billionaires and climate change deniers, among others. The Alliance Defending Freedom is an evangelical Christian legal group that purports to fight against the homosexual agenda, supports recriminalizing homosexuality, supports conversion therapy, defended state-enforced sterilization of transgender people, and has helped draft anti-trans bills in 20-plus states in the US. So there might be a bias there. Let's also give some context on detransitioners. Detransitioners are people who, for whatever reason, began their gender transition and then decided to go back on it. I say for whatever reason because while there's a narrative that detransitioners just realized they were wrong, the vast majority actually do so due to external pressures, whether that's not being able to afford medical expenses or their family and friends pushing them back into the closet. That said, there are people who just realize that transitioning isn't for them and they go back, and that's fine. But it's not indicative of a widespread problem. The average rate of regret for gender-affirming surgery is less than 1%. For context, the average rate of regret for knee surgery is 6 to 30%. The average rate of regret for surgery in general is around 14%. When I say transition though, I don't just mean surgery. Social transition, changing your name, appearance, clothing, has been shown time and time again to have unambiguously positive results for transgender people. And everything in this documentary aligns with what I'm saying. They focus on two detransitioners, both of whom were forced back into the closet by their families, both of whom report being happy when they were trans and miserable now. I have no idea how they thought this was a good look for them. Daisy Strongen, one of the subjects of the documentary, came out after it was released and was like, "Hey, I hope you guys don't think I'm happy now. I am not. I still fantasize about being a guy at least a few times a week, and I'm often a guy in my dreams. Jesus Christ is my only hope." Both of these stories are actually incredibly depressing and telling in how cruel the push against gender affirmation is. Both of these subjects have faced immense hardship since transitioning, not because of their transition, but because of vicious outside forces that wouldn't just accept them. First on the docket is Daisy. Daisy learned about transgender people online when she was a teenager.
I watched a lot of, gender transformation videos and saw these people really just go from female to male visually. They looked like men, and I was like, whoa, I didn't even know that it was possible for a woman to pass as a man that well. It's really dark when you think about it.
I don't think that's dark. I don't think it's dark for teenagers to go online and see people being happy in their own skin. I think that's fine, actually.
The people who are consuming this are children, 13, 14, 15 years old, and it's so easy for them to literally be groomed.
Friendly reminder that this individual is literally the victim of Christian conservative grooming to suppress their trans identity. This goes back to the idea that every accusation is a confession. Conversion therapy, which we will hear about later in this video, is the exact kind of grooming that conservatives claim is coming from trans supportive parents. Oh, my child independently arrived at this identity, and now I'm going to bring in outside forces to, content warning for later in this video, do some pretty horrible things so I can change that identity.
There's just an infinite amount of ways that you can interpret and express your own gender identity, and your gender identity is who you are, and nobody gets to take that away from you.
This is the kind of thing you'd hear in Wow Wow Wubsy or Care Bears. There's so many ways to express yourself and no one gets to take that away from you, but then they have this spooky music playing in the background. Conservatives are terrified of free expression. That's why they're always hammering down on what men should be, what women should do. Civilizations die when you don't pass down the grit and strength of manliness. The truth is, men now are nothing like they were 100 years ago, who are nothing like they were 1,000 years ago. The same goes for women. Everything is changing all the time. It's all culture. It's all free-flowing. Be the best person you can. If you want to be a dude or a chick, go for it. As long as you're not hurting anyone, do your thing.
I just started looking into all of it. I was like, oh, so there's genderqueer, gender fluid, there's agender, there's you can be a demi-girl, which is when you're 90% girl, 10% not girl.
I microlabeled in middle school. Nothing came of it. But also, so what if it did? So what if I identified as a demi-girl right now? What impact does that have on anyone? Anyway, Daisy comes out as trans, starts going by Ollie. Cut to Abel.
It was around middle school. I was surfing YouTube one day and a video popped up, male to female, and that eventually planted the seeds of doubt. It allowed me to be caught by the ideology.
The right wants to paint trans people as a social contagion. Jordan Peterson did this a few months ago, trying to say that Elliot Page shouldn't be allowed to post pictures of himself looking happy because the mere sight of a happy trans person is enough to turn people trans.
So by acquiescing to this surgery and by publicizing it,
by insisting upon the sanctity and the moral virtue of his, her, their new, expensive, dangerous, and medically enhanced identity, and by participating in the whole identity charade, Elliot has undoubtedly, with his, her, their so-called courage, enticed many a poor, confused adolescent, girl most likely, to blame her emergent pubescent self-consciousness, confusion, and discomfort on being born in the wrong body and believing that the courageous, self-affirming, and morally admirable route is hormonal treatment, sterilization, subjugation to a lifetime of expensive medical complication, and misery.
It's telling that for both of the people in this documentary, their introduction to being trans was just seeing it online. To them, being groomed into the ideology is just seeing it. Not even talking to anyone, just seeing it online. That's not grooming. I've seen a lot of trans people in my life. I'm not trans. If just knowing that trans people exist is enough to turn you trans, you might be trans. But you know what is grooming?
Eventually my father found out what I was doing. And due to our culture, he was not happy. And he took me to Mexico and had me have sexual relationship against my will with a prostitute.
So we have our first instance of teen sexual abuse and grooming, and it's from the anti-trans father.
My father told the prostitute, take good care of him, it's his first time.
I have no idea why PragerU is using this person's genuinely tragic story to try and make their point.
He was trying to prove that I was a man. That broke me, obviously.
It's remarkable to me that the takeaway is supposed to be that being trans is harmful when this is included in the story. Like, Jesus Christ. It's almost like conservative overreactions to their kids being trans do infinitely more harm than just being trans.
After that, I go back to the therapist and told her I wanted to transition.
And conversion therapy doesn't even work.
I actually did my very first shot right there in the doctor's office, and I was just euphoric, and it was real, and I was actually going to start seeing changes, and I was going to start passing, which basically meant that everyone around me was going to see me as a boy, an actual boy. This feels good. This makes me happy.
Yeah, we're really selling the idea that transition is like maladaptive and bad. This is the first time that Daisy has looked even remotely happy. Like, she looks happy talking about, I feel bad calling her she. The way they talk about this really robs trans people and their parents of any sort of agency. Like, they act like the transition just happened and it wasn't something that they actively sought out.
My name is Prisha Mosley. I was a 15-year-old girl when the trans community found me.
Like this is why it's so difficult to take this seriously. The way they express their concerns is never like a principled, reasoned set of arguments. It's this like fear-mongering bullshit. Like, this framing is wild. They found me, which, by the way, in the 2 case studies we have here, they both found the trans community on their own. And hey, we have a little lying with statistics moment.
Double mastectomies on teenage girls went up 13-fold between 2013 and 2020. Between 2016 and 2019 alone, these procedures went up by 500%.
18-year-old me, what do you have to say about this? Percent changes can be really misleading because they're like entirely dependent on the size of the thing. It literally says on the screen, between 2013 and 2020, a total of 209 patients underwent gender-affirming mastectomies. Average that out, that's 26 per year. With numbers that small, it's easy to have a 13-fold increase. The 500% increase that they're showing is from 8 to 48. This is not an epidemic. Actually, I want to look at the study they're citing. Hold on. Oh, I bet they won't show this part. The prevalence of surgical complications was low, and of over 200 adolescents who underwent surgery, only 2 expressed regret, neither of which underwent a reversal option. That's again less than a 1% regret rate, which is generously a sixth of the average of that of knee surgery. Our study provides useful and positive guidance for adolescent patients, their families, and providers regarding favorable outcomes with gender-affirming mastectomy. I want to reiterate that the only substantial negative thing that has happened so far is that a conservative parent had their child hoping to correct their transness. That is the only thing in this video that has been a clear moral harm, and it's on the side of PragerU. I have no idea why they included it. Anyway, to prove our point of how harmful being trans is, let's show some more trans joy. There's like a lot of trans joy in this documentary, which I mean I appreciate. I don't know why it's in here. As opposed to, by the way, how our documentary subject is now, which is to say miserable. She's literally on Twitter like, I don't want anyone to get the impression from this documentary that I'm happy. And then in it she's like so grim. The only time she looks even remotely happy is when she's reliving starting T. It's so sad.
I was almost 5 years on testosterone. So if I had gone further, I wouldn't have been able to go back.
Conservatives talk a big talk about how hormones are irreversible, they destroy your body irreversibly, and then they show this person who's like, yeah, I was on testosterone for 5 years, and now I look and sound like a cis woman.
When I found out I was pregnant, I was just over the moon.
She had a kid! So much for irreversible sterilization. They then have a series of testimonials from people saying they detransitioned, which you'll notice that a lot of anti-trans propaganda relies really heavily on testimonies because it's actually really easy to get testimonies from people when you're paying them. What's harder is getting really good statistical data, which is why the one study they pulled from for this whole documentary still went against what they were trying to say, so they had to cherry pick and lie about the conclusions.
You know, once you've taken all those hormones, Billy, your body is changed beyond repair.
Unless it's taking T for 5 years, and then you can just stop and be a cis woman and be fertile and have a kid.
My name is Abel Garcia, and I am a detransitioner.
My name is Daisy, and I am a woman.
You know what? I gotta hand it to him. This is a very informative documentary. Both of these detransitioners described briefly feeling joy when they were able to transition, and then their abusive conservative families dragging them back into self-hatred and dysphoria. I do genuinely feel bad for them. Like, if you have an ounce of compassion in your body, this is really hard to watch. It just doesn't make the point that they think it's making. But, like, for better or for worse, despite their $1 million ad buy, I've seen basically no conservatives talking about this. I'm gonna file this one under fascists are incapable of objectively analyzing their own media. Thank you!